little while. Thank you very much. And we are recording this. It's more for us making notes about people's ideas and solutions. It's not at all for putting on the website or public information at all. I just want to introduce you to our organization if you're not aware of us. Many of you might have heard of this through our newsletter. If you heard of us through Facebook or some other way, maybe you heard from a friend. First Things First Okanagan is a climate action and education group. We're about 6 years old, I think. Our goal is just to promote awareness of climate change and work to find solutions in the Okanagan for creating a better future. We work we usually, when COVID's not around, we have educational events, talks. We've sponsored symposium. We lobby representatives. We meet with politicians. We try and work with other groups. And I guess this is an example of us reaching out to the Cycle Association and trying to support an initiative that's important in our area. We try to encourage people to learn, but then also take action. And that's what part of tonight is about. It's a way for us to do something really important that's coming up this week. I'm going to pass things over to Sue to just talk a little bit about, before I do that, this is part of a discussion series we've started called Deep Dive. We can't meet in person, so we thought, well, maybe this is a good time to just try and learn a little bit more about issues in our area and around the world. So last month we met with about a dozen people and had a talk on COVID and climate change. Excuse me. And this month we're focusing on transportation. We're actually going to have a meeting, another deep dive meeting. We share videos and information. Everybody reads it, and then we get together and talk about it and talk about action. That's on November the 26th. So if you'd like to join us for our transportation deep dive, and you haven't already, just you can raise it. Sorry, the phone is ringing. I can't do anything about it.
Maybe it's somebody trying to get in who doesn't know how to.
No, it isn't. I didn't know who it is. Somebody else. Just let us know if you'd like to join us for our discussion on Thursday on the 26th. So I'll mute myself and let you take it away, Sue.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I'm Sue Kirschman. I'm also on the board of First Things First Okanagan. One of First Things First Okanagan's mandates is to look for ways to reduce carbon emissions locally. As you may or may not know, transportation is responsible for about 68% of emissions in the Okanagan. So encouraging people to get out of their cars and onto non-emitting modes of transportation is quite important to us. So right now our area does have a cycling route, but it's not very adequate. The infrastructure isn't very adequate. The proposed lake-to-lake bicycle route would provide the backbone of a cycling infrastructure that could be expanded on in the future, and we're supportive of it for many reasons, safety, etc. But a big part of it would be to help get people onto different modes of transportation away from their cars. So we've invited Matt Hopkins from the Penticton Area Cycling Association to join us tonight. And he's going to provide a bit of background, details about the route, etc., and answer any questions that any of you might have. But we thought just before we start, if we could just get everyone to just quickly introduce themselves and where you're from, just so we have a sense of which areas we are representing here. So I'm from Naramata. Lori, maybe you could just go next.
Yes, I'm from Penticton, and I'm a sometimes cyclist, and
I'll go next. My name is Margaret. I live on the West Bench, big hill to get up and down the West Bench. So, but we are connected to town by the KVR. I don't bike on roads because I don't feel safe. So I just bike on flat trails.
Jane, do you want to go ahead?
Okay. My name is Jim Beatty, and I live in Naramata. I also have a house in Penticton, and I ride occasionally, usually back and forth to Penticton from Naramata when weather permits. And yeah.
Nick?
Hey everybody, I'm Nick. Reside in Penticton, up the hill. I think Matt, you mentioned by the hospital. I'm up the hill near Columbia Elementary School.
Cotty?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm Cotty and I live in Penticton. I live on a very flat area. It's eminently cycleable. I don't cycle regularly. I don't. I did try going. I did actually get on the bicycle and went all the way across town and back, trying to find the current KVR trail that goes actually through the middle of Penticton. And I found most of it, which was really interesting and it was fun. And I enjoyed it. It's just I don't have anyone to cycle with. It's a little awkward for errands and I just haven't been doing it a lot, but I used to cycle a lot when I was younger. And I'm a big, I feel in theory very strongly about having safe and comfortable places to cycle. And so I very, very much think that we have to go that direction, having a built environment that's friendly to people and pedestrians and bicycles. And I'm right near Skaha Park, which is nice and flat. And I've seen so many people out there since COVID has started with all different kinds of bicycles and all different ages. I see whole families out there, the little kids, and I see older people with the battery powered bikes, and I think that's where I'm hoping to go one of these days. So I'd like to do more cycling. I think that I've been reading your stuff in the newspaper, Matt, and I think that it's been incredibly helpful. So I've been putting my 2 cents into Penticton and Shape Your City, and it's swayed me in terms of where I thought the best route was going to be, to tell the truth, because I wasn't sure about Winnipeg versus Martin Street. So anyway, I'm excited about hearing more.
Thanks, Cotty. Richard?
Hi. Well, I'm one of those people that likes to call himself an avid cyclist. I have an electric bike. I've had it since May of 2017. It's electric assist. It's not straight electric. I have to pedal all the time. And I call it my car. It's my car, except that I've only ever been here in those last 4 years, 3 years and a half in the warm weather months. And since it got cold, I have not ridden. I don't know how much I'm going to ride through the winter. However, in those 3 years in the warm months, I've cycled, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying I've cycled more than 5,500 kilometers, all of it around Penticton, quite a bit of it on the trails, but that's how I get around in town as a rule. And I feel like I'm taking my life into my hands, like every single time that I go out on the bike. And I haven't fortunately had that many close calls, but I had the odd one here and there. And I have ridden the route that has been proposed, more or less. And I'm not really, I don't really have a lot of problems with it until we get into the downtown core.
Maybe we could save our discussion of the things until
anyway.
Yeah.
I live in Penticton. I am an avid cyclist, and I'm
Great.
very keen to have a safer way to get around town.
Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica. I live in Summerland. I actually live almost on Lakeshore, so it's a bit of a climb to get up to any of the trails in Summerland. But before the weather started turning, I did bike to school every day.
Thanks. And Janice?
Hi, I'm the current president of the Trail of the Okanagan Society, and we're a group that advocates for a trail that will go from Sicamous down to Brewster, but our focus is in the South Okanagan from the Bennett Bridge down to Osoyoos. So I'm here to listen to all the exciting things that are happening in Penticton, and I will say we are looking for a representative from Penticton to join our group so that we have somebody from that area. We're missing Penticton and Osoyoos, so if anybody wants to join, please let me know.
Okay. Thank you. So I think Mike or Matt, we can turn it over to you if you'd like to.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate Margaret, you reaching out to me this week. That was excellent. So just a little bio about me. I've been in Penticton about 6 years. My wife and I moved here from Vancouver. I was in Vancouver 10 years prior to that. I grew up in the Kootenays, Nelson, and Trail. And when I was living in, when I met my wife maybe 10 years ago, we were living on the west side of Vancouver, and my wife was riding her bike to work and across the Burrard Street Bridge to St. Paul's Hospital. And my wife is not, I wouldn't call her an athletic person. I would say generally she's more of a meek individual. And it just was amazing to me that she was riding a bike to work. I wouldn't consider her an necessarily an athletic person, a person who's going to get out there, you know, and ride her bike with traffic. That wasn't something that she would have been into. And so based on that, I started riding my bike up downtown in Vancouver. I rode over the Burrard Street Bridge, and it was just life-changing. Obviously, I wrote in the paper recently, it saved me a lot of money. Things were expensive in Vancouver, and it gave me exercise at the start, at the end of my day, which was great. 2014, we moved to Penticton, and obviously I wanted to ride my bike here. And right away, kind of like Richard was saying, I remember very, very vividly the first time I rode my bike down Winnipeg Street, trying to get to the grocery store, trying to get to Safeway from Lakeshore Drive. I was staying in one of the motels when I just moved here, and the experience was like nothing I'd ever experienced. I'm not a person who puts on a spandex outfit and will go for 150 kilometers. I'm just a person who wants to get to work. I want to get to the grocery store. I want to meet my friends. So after that experience, I wasn't an advocate really in any way, other than when I moved to Penticton, it was clear that this activity that was so simple and cheap and, like you say, zero emission, was being significantly suppressed just by the built environment we had here. So over the next couple of years, I met people that had a similar interest to me. And I would say towards the end of 2017, we kind of looked at ourselves, we got into a room and kind of said, obviously, we're just a few people. What can we do that will show people that there's other folks here that would like to ride a bike if you make it simpler and more convenient for them? And the thing that we came up with is the bike valet. And I don't know if any of you, we didn't use it, we didn't operate it this year at the farmer's market, but the bike valet is basically a coat check. Perfect, yeah. Basically a coat check, but for your bicycle. So 3 of us got together, we got some money donated, we bought some racks, and we started talking with the farmer's market. And we just basically set up at the farmer's market and said, hey, if you're riding your bike, we'll watch it for you for free for however long you're going to be here, almost as a thank you, and to show the city that there's people out there that would like to ride your bike, ride the bike if they do things simply, if we can do simple things for them to encourage. So that first year, 2018, we were at the farmer's market 20 weeks. We parked 800 bikes. And basically with that example, we went to the city in January of 2019, myself and a colleague of mine who was a board member of PAC at the time by the name of Tricia Kaplan. And we basically laid it out on the line and said, look what we did last year just by holding people's bikes for them while they shopped at the farmer's market. We did nothing to improve the physical environment. We did nothing to separate them from cars. We just basically guaranteed that their bike was not going to get stolen. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people. So based on that, we pitched an idea that, number one, the city would commit $35,000 to more bike parking in town. And when I say bike parking, I mean the simplest bike parking ever. Just just a rack bolted into the road. Like we didn't even have that in many places. And obviously we're a work in progress there still. But the second thing was that we wanted the city to work on a study or start something on what we called a lake-to-lake route. And basically the gist of it, and I think what you all mentioned about your experience riding a bike here is so powerful, because what we want is a route, number one, that's safe for all ages and abilities. So sometimes it's called an 8 to 80 route, people that are 8 and safe for people that are 80, or they can be younger or even older than that. But number one, we want a route that's safe for all abilities of cyclists, that enables people to get out and use their bicycle for transportation. Number two, that connects to key destinations. So, you know, when we spoke about this in council in 2019, I kind of made examples of the routes we have now. Government Street, which is near my house, it's more of a bypass. It goes up the hill. There's no physical separation. The snow gets stored in it in the winter. It's poorly maintained. And you're riding next to heavy truck traffic on Government Street through the industrial area. If it's not good enough for a child, then it's not good enough. So that was what we said. And it goes up a really, really big hill. There's lots of folks that can't get up those hills on both sides onto the high side of the hospital. So it works for folks who are athletic, or that people that want to get a bypass and they want to ride their bike out to OK Falls and do a big loop, or Ironman type folks. That's great. It doesn't work for everyone to consider using a bicycle as a transportation tool. Obviously, the other one that we talk about is the, trying to remember the name of it, but the off the Channel Parkway, the one that goes, you know, on the other side of the channel, on the First Nation land there. So again, a good spot for people that want to use bicycle for recreation. It's amazing because you're not even anywhere close to a car, but it doesn't get you to the grocery store. It's not going to get me to the mall. I get to the senior center from there. So number two is the one that connects to key amenities, and this route does. It's going to basically connect to Safeway and the whole Penticton Plaza. It's going to connect to the public library. It's going to connect to the Salvation Army. It's going to connect to the senior center, Skaha Lake Park, a ton of destinations, or be almost adjacent to many others. And that it's linear. You know, when you look at other cities, you know, Copenhagen, or you look at a place like Amsterdam, a lot of the time they choose the bike because it's the fastest route through town. We want a route that's straight, that's a straight line that can get us through and access most of the city. So that's basically the idea behind the lake-to-lake route. Over the last year and a half, the city's done extensive public consultation in many forms. I'm sure you guys many of you referenced at the Shape Your City website. So that's been going on. I've written 15 pieces in the Herald about sustainable transportation. And basically at this point, next Monday, as it was referenced earlier, is a public hearing, and the city is going to decide to make an amendment to the official community plan and put this specific route as the route in the official community plan. And basically the city has already started to work on grant projects for this route. There's a number of grant projects that are going to be available. One is called the Canadian Emergency Response Infrastructure Program, CERIP, and the city's already applied for that. That can be up to $1 million in funding for active transportation infrastructure projects. So basically, as I wrote in the paper, we're at the fork in the road. There's going to be a vote on Monday after the public hearing. We're either going to get a yes vote, this project is going to continue, a no vote, and it's essentially dead. So yeah, I guess that's the gist of it. And I'd be happy to take any questions you have about it. I think one thing I would like to add before I do that is, probably a lot of you were involved in the official community plan and the process that went on, and it concluded around a year ago, I think, or maybe even less. They have a clear, in the OCP, they have a clear transportation hierarchy. Number one is pedestrians. Number two is cycling. So, you know, one of the things that we're going to be mentioning, our entire board is planning on being at the public hearing, is that if these documents mean something and they hold water and we work on them and we get so much community involvement, if you're actually not going to spend the money and allocate funds to these things, you're never going to move in that direction. So that's one of the other things that I think is important about the timing of it, and, you know, and where we are with transportation in Penticton. But I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has about it.
I just wanted to say I'm making notes, and I also have notes on who to write the letter to, copies of, if they're going to, copies are going to council and the newspapers. I've got all of those links, so I'll be emailing this out to all of you at the end of the evening.
Patty has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had an idea of whether we thought we had votes already, or if there were
Within the
particular
council?
people that we needed to move, and if the meeting on Monday is a place where it's going to be useful to, is it in person? Is it online? Is it, yeah.
Yeah, good question. So the meeting is going to be in person, 7:30 on Monday at the, I'll have to check again. I believe it's the Cleveland Theater. It's at the convention center, but I think specifically they've moved it to the Cleveland Theater. And there are COVID restrictions in place. They are going to have Zoom options available as well. You can go online, and I know that the last I heard, there's going to be a limit of 30 people in the theater at one time. So I haven't heard more specifically about how they're going to manage that. But one thing is, what I would say is, if anyone feels comfortable going to the public hearing, it's certainly a great option to make your presence felt. I mean, what we are encouraging all our members to do, the Cycling Association, and Margaret referenced it, is to send emails, and where those would go is council@penticton.ca, and public hearings at penticton.ca. So that's on the public record. Your question about the councillors and where we feel vulnerable, or where we feel that we have the votes. I guess my answer to that would be, we feel pretty confident that we have Councillor Watt and Councillor Bloomfield as strong yeses on the project. We feel right now that the mayor and Councillor Sentes are likely no's. You know, those things can change. And the other two councillors, Councillor Robinson, we do feel, at this point, we feel strongly that she's going to vote in favor. You know, when we came to council in January 2019, she was vocally the most strongly for the project. She referenced the history of Penticton cycling, even just like she talked about even the creation of the Government Street route, which some of you were here probably at that time. I wasn't, but even that as being, you know, obviously something that was hard to get through, and they managed to pass that. So, and the other thing I would say about Councillor Robinson is that we, our members who have reached out to the council already have got pretty swift responses from her, and all being really positive. So we feel strongly that we think she's a positive. The last one, Councillor Rieger, I don't know. Honestly, I've talked to him a number of times in person advocating for it, and I think he understands why we believe in it. And he made some positive comments about it at the last council meeting. But I don't know. I mean, I really feel it could go either way. It's tough too, because it's six members now instead of 7. So we need 4 out of 6. 3 out of 6 doesn't pass. So I feel confident, but it's by no means a lock at this point.
I think Jim is next to make a comment or a question.
Actually, Kathy had asked my question, but I did have a follow-up. When is the vote after the public meeting? Is it in a week, or is it, it's not on the same day, is it?
My understanding, it is the same day. Oh, unless
Oh.
it's unless they defer it to Tuesday, but my understanding is it is the same day. I could probably get back to you on that, but it should be imminently.
Okay.
I was wondering whether you already have people that you know are coming to the public hearing and that have written. Like, how urgent is it to get the feeling of lots of supporters there?
Our entire board is going to be there, which is about 10 or 12, or that's our plan. And I've heard from at least a few others that I know are going to be there. I've spoken with an individual by the name of Randy Boris, who leads a group, Lakeside Road Residents Association. They're really interested in cycling improvements down in that area of town. He has a background in municipal engineering and strongly believes in the project. Doesn't think it's expensive from a capital works point of view. So we know some from his group are going to be there. I've just, we want people there, and I know a presence is important. I'm wary. I don't want to pressure anyone, obviously, in COVID times to be somewhere they don't want to be with other people. I completely respect that. So I would say, we're trying to get a sort of a steady stream of emails in. Basically, what we've been told, the deadline for the emails is 9 a.m., I think on Monday, to be included in the public record. But yeah, we're hoping we get a pretty good turnout.
I'll ask another question then. I noticed
Yeah.
you have an appeal on Facebook for people to get active and write in.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned sending the letters to council, but as I read it, they really should be sent to the clerk of the public hearing, that to count. So I would encourage you to put that in as well.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. So we heard specifically about that. So our cycling association is going to send a reminder email to our membership likely tomorrow, and we'll include that email. We've also been told by the clerk that they're grabbing all the emails from the council at Penticton, PA, and sending emails to people, making sure that they're aware that it's going to be in the public record. So, but I appreciate you mentioning that. I think too, the other thing is that, with the emails originally, this has been explained to me more, that the public record is important. The reason we want to get it in front of council is we want to try and obviously not only get that on the record, but we are looking to flip some of those votes. And, when it goes to council, it goes right into their inbox. I don't know if they see it as quickly on that public hearings one, but.
Nicholas?
Yeah, just a quick question. In all of this, obviously with the letters to the editor and I guess Facebook groups, you do see I'm going to use it, the squeaky wheels that have been kind of opposing this project and pretty much anything having to do with cycling in the community. Do you, in your experience, think that it is just a vocal minority? Because it's usually not the people who are cycling that are opposed to it, and they usually don't have a lot of either evidence or just even skin in the game once you do start to talk to them and engage with them meaningfully. Has the opposition been, I guess, what you would expect from something like this based on what we've seen, or I guess what's your experience been in that? Yeah, so, at the start of this, the city's been put out a lot of surveys on this through the Shaper City website, and everyone who's replied that there's been a strong mandate. The council's got a strong mandate that the community wants a project like this. The first survey that came out, I think 82% of the people in the survey, over 1,000 people, supported the route. And the number one, which is the most important thing for us, the number one reason that people are not riding a bike, according to the survey, is they don't feel safe doing so. And that's obviously, even just speaking with your group, that's something that we key on, right? That from a financial point of view, both to the citizen and to the city as a whole,
walking is really, really cheap. Cycling is really, really, really cheap. Getting people moving around in big automobiles, obviously the pollution is bad, the noise is bad, but just from a fiscal perspective, it's really, really expensive. Like, you would want to do everything you can to get someone out of their car because of the cost. So to answer your question, for sure, we do hear it. I mean, you see it in the Facebook groups and in the threads, and I've engaged in good faith with a number of those individuals over this last year and a half. You know, I told this to the rest of our board in the last couple of days. At this point, for us, where we are on the sort of campaign, we're really more looking at a sort of a get out the vote point of view right now. I'm not going to work on convincing anyone who doesn't believe in the project and completely flip them with 3 days before a council meeting. What I can do is try to get to every single person in the community who I believe this is going to really help, and ask them to put their weight behind it. So that's sort of where we've focused our attention in the last week or two. But yeah, I agree with you. It can be a polarizing project. It shouldn't be, but at this stage, it is, right? So yeah. Sorry.
One of the negatives that I've heard from a couple of people is it's so expensive. Why would we be spending the money when we already have roads? And
Yeah.
so that is a common thing, especially if, you know, because of COVID, they don't have much money.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
transportation is getting funding, and that, you know, for a grant, I think that's a really good thing. But it also reduces our emissions and makes Penticton look like a really smart city.
Well, and I think, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think too, I'm glad you brought that point up about the cost, because that's come up to me when I've reached out to people asking for their support. They're concerned about the cost. Doing things for walking and cycling in the context of transportation, in the context of capital works, it's not expensive. It just isn't. Like, so this project's $8 million. I'll give you one example. The city's, I'll give you another example of a transportation project. Most of you are probably aware. Right around the Salvation Army, there's sort of that road right where there's a gas station. One of them is South Main. The other one is Skaha Lake Road. They almost intersect. It is a really bad spot in the road. The city has purchased an old hotel called the Sheelings Motel on Galt Street. Okay, so they're going to rework that intersection. They're going to change it into a roundabout, make that traffic flow better. That project is probably going to be $4.5 to $5 million. That's one intersection in the entire city. I don't know how many intersections there are. 1,000 maybe. Somebody else may know. But that's just one. That's not going to fundamentally change someone's life. That's not going to reduce someone's car dependence. That's not going to give the ability of an 8-year-old child to get to school safely. So, you know, it is money, but in the scheme of capital works or transportation, we really feel strongly that it's not that expensive. And but it is something we're hearing. Totally, it's valid. Yeah, go ahead,
Richard.
Hi. So to get to something that really hasn't been discussed so far, and it's actually one of the reasons why I joined the group tonight, is the issue that's been brought up many times by the detractors of this project, and that is that whether or not the route is divided or not. It's really not clear. And I don't even really know, to be perfectly honest, if it's divided or not. And the issue of whether it's divided or not goes directly to the second probably most mentioned objection to the project, which is the safety of riding on Martin Street. Now, if I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, Martin Street is a one-way street going south, and I would not want to be going against that traffic if it was not a divided road. I just wouldn't do it. I mean, I just told you I've ridden 5,500 kilometers in this town in the last 4 years. And if I knew that that was not divided, and I don't know, quite frankly. So This is to me something that really needs to be up front and center in this whole discussion. If you want to get the naysayers and the detractors on board, is to really explain what parts are divided, what parts are not divided.
By divided, Richard, do you mean a barrier?
Yes.
A vehicle barrier.
Correct. That's what a divided bike lane means. You
The
have
entire
a
route.
barrier between vehicular traffic and bicycle traffic.
Yeah, so the entire route is, so the
The entire route is what?
Separated from traffic.
Well, that message is not out there. We've missed that message completely.
Yeah, I would disagree with you there. I mean, it's an all ages and abilities cycling route, and that is essentially what an all ages and abilities cycling route is.
I know, but I think the thing I'm trying to get at is that when you're so close to something and you see it every day and you see it all the time, you know, as you've said, it's a divided route and it's an all ages, etc. I'm telling you that the general public does not know that. That message needs to get out there. That would change so many minds. It's pretty simple. It's not a hard thing to do.
I respect what you've said. I completely disagree with you in terms of the message hasn't been out. I would agree with you. Certainly there's people that don't get that. I don't agree with you that the message isn't out there. I mean, this is a project.
Well, Matt, I've read every one of your columns in the Herald, and I've followed everything that I can follow. And if someone were to have asked me a couple of hours ago if this route is 100% divided, I would have said, I'm not really sure, because I haven't really seen anything definitive that says that. I would say that over and over and over again, especially to the detractors.
Well, I'll just point to the evidence that indicates as much that it is in the package that they sent out and that they've got in the lengthy PDF. In attachment C, lake to lake AAA bicycle route cost estimate description, the key considerations in the development of the cost estimate for each section. Bullet 1, in each of the 4 sections of the route, northbound South Main, single one-way bike lane protected by bike barrier. Southbound Main, protected by parked vehicles. Section 2, protected by a barrier. Section 3, protected by a barrier. Section 4, protected by a barrier. So I can't speak to what's happened in the past in either the lack of communication or understanding, but the first bulleted points in the cost estimate description document is clearly indicating that they would be protected by barriers.
All right, so if I may say, and I'm not disagreeing with you, and that it's there, I'm just simply saying that the public message that's getting out there, that's getting written, that's showing up in the letters to the editor, that's showing up in the various discussion groups is that riding on Martin Street is going to be unsafe. Why would anybody say it's going to be unsafe if you're completely divided by a 3-foot high concrete barrier? Well, because they don't know, or they're saying that it's not going to be there. So I'm just trying to suggest that
or they're against the project.
Pardon me?
Or they're against the project.
Well, they may be against the project, but they may be against it because they think that riding on Martin Street against traffic without a barrier is unsafe, and they don't know that it's there. And you know what? Yeah, you're right. It's in the documents, but the general public doesn't read those documents.
So Richard, we'll hear from Connie next. Richard, that'll be a great point for you to write in your letter to the editor. Just let them know that you're so excited because it's a protected bike route. Connie?
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. I was going to make that same point. I just wanted to ask Janice Lee, because you're here tonight and you've been working on the trail issues throughout the entire Okanagan. Is there any sort of insights or thoughts that you have about how to make this successful in Penticton from the experience you've had trying to get these things through in other parts of the valley?
Well, our group is currently trying to commission an economic benefit analysis for the entire route and show how much money comes in from tourism when you have an all ages and all ability cycle routes. In particular, if you want to bring in international travelers, they're looking for routes that they can travel on for several days. And they're looking for amenities in between, places to stay, places to visit, places to, great indigenous heritage, history, all of that sort of stuff. And we've got that in spades if we could actually connect the routes that we have. We are hoping our plans are to have that economic benefit analysis study done and then speak to each of the communities, because one of the, from West Kelowna down to Osoyoos, one of the things that we're finding is that depending on which community, like Peachland doesn't even have cycling in their recreational master plan, if you can believe it. Other communities like West Kelowna are a little further ahead. We're seeing, Kelowna itself is further ahead. But what we're hoping to do is to get buy-in from each of these groups from an economic basis about what it does for tourism. And we've got background studies that say that smaller towns actually do better from a tourism point of view if they promote cycling, because they get a better, if you're in a car, you can bypass something really quickly. If you're on a bike, you're going to stop, you're going to buy something to eat, you're going to fix your bike, you're going to stop and see the amenities. In fact, friends of mine who are counselors in Montreal working on some of these same issues are finding studies that there's actually a better drop in terms of the amount of money somebody on a bike spends than somebody in a car, because the cars are just moving through, but your bikes are actually in your community. So I would say we're kind of at the beginning of this conversation, and we're trying to join the communities, and we're trying to figure out, because everybody's really focused on their own thing. So my question to you is, how does this then reach out and connect with the trails that we're trying to build that go to the next community? Because that also creates this connectivity, right? Where was I going with this? So we're trying to decide, does the Trail of the Okanagan, currently ours is, we're showing it on the Channel Pathway, but then how does that connect into Penticton? Because we'll want to show how people, if they're coming along and they're riding north and south, how can they very easily get over and get onto the path that you are doing? Because people who are tourists are going to want to see what Penticton's all about, and they're going to want easy connections in. They're not going to come off if they don't have that all ages and all abilities connection over to what you're trying to build today. I'm not sure I really answered your question, but we're trying to approach it from a slightly broader perspective and from an economic basis.
Yeah, and I would just address that last point you made, and I think it's an important one for us, is that the idea of this route, and it was referenced, I don't know if it was Margaret or somebody at the start of the meeting referenced it, the idea that behind this all ages and abilities route from one end of town to the other is that we hope that it's going to create a spine for a future network. In other words, we get one lane in that goes right through the city. Organic demand is created. People are liking it. People like to be able to shop by bike. Then they say, hey, we need some east-west thrown in here. We need an east-west here. We need an east-west here that go into that north-south connection. So I think from our point as a cycling advocacy organization, it's something the city's also been on record of with this route many, many times. So, we hope that this is the start. We hope that we get a route that's great and people start using it. And, the future, there's future connections that are built into it, basically.
Thank you.
There's one person we haven't heard from, and that's Sibylla. I was wondering, Sibylla, would you like to make any points or ask a question?
Hi, yeah, I'm Sibylla. I'll turn my camera to myself. No, I just was interested in the progress and how it's going. I don't have any specific questions. I guess the one thing I'm interested, the route when it comes up Martin Street, goes along Fairview.
Yes. Yep. So
goes up Duncan.
Yeah. So what happens is, and the city's got maps on it on the Shape Your City website as well. But essentially, the route goes up Fairview, and then it cuts in behind on an old piece of the KVR, kind of in just north of like the Shaw property, and then it comes out basically between, I think it's called the Hamptons and the newer rental buildings in Penticton.
Yes.
And then the intersection, so the intersection would be completely reworked. That is Duncan and Atkinson. That's a complete disaster for folks trying to get across on
Yes.
foot or on a bike, or it's even bad for cars, quite frankly. So that's going to be totally reworked with some sort of light there. It's probably going to be a cyclist or pedestrian controlled light, but there are detailed designs on the City of Penticton website. But yeah, from there, then you would go down Atkinson to the end of Atkinson and then connect Kinney through to South Main.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about that Duncan Atkinson with that light there in going into Safeway.
Yeah, so it would be completely reworked as to what it looks like right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I think we'd like to leave some time for Nicholas to talk about, I encourage you all to send your own personal letter to for the public hearing, the council, and the letters to the editor. But we're also preparing a letter on behalf of First Things First as a whole. And I think Nick wants to maybe talk a little bit about that and ask about, might have some questions too for you, Matt.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so as I guess the chair for the Political Action Committee, something that we always look to do when we see endeavors and possibilities for this is how can we contribute to the overall success and moving forward with things that, as First Things First, being an organization that tries to educate and advocate for, I guess, meaningful action on the environment and especially on things like climate change. Cycling is very important with respect to transportation because if you've got somebody on a bike, it means that they are not in a car and typically just contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the things that we're looking to do in how we frame what we're going to contribute to the city is on that environmental front and from an environmental perspective. And that's, I guess, a question and maybe some input that you could provide where knowing that your organization is going to be there on Monday night, to which I'll be there as well, just providing spoken comments as well as our written submission, how we can best complement what you've been working at and for this whole time, and just really add that additional push to City Council with our expertise and our credibility on the environmental front.
You know, I think Sue made the point at the start of the meeting when when I think about your organization and you talk about carbon emissions and you talk about the carbon emissions of transportation, and I think Sue said it was like 68% of the emissions in Penticton or something really, really high like that. So, I think that's something, the pollution aspect is important to us. I don't think it's been something that we've, which I think is helpful with your organization, because obviously that's the key. I think for us, we've been more focused on, safety, equity in transportation has been more of the keys for us, and getting to amenities and having a cheap option to get around. But I think the emissions point is really well made. And you'd probably find more data on it than I've even seen, but a lot of these trips that we make in cars that are 1, 2, 3, 4 kilometers can be easily flipped with trips on a bike that can be done really quickly. And now you have e-bikes where people that are normally in car dependent neighborhoods can get to the grocery store and back, or they can get to their doctor's appointment. Like, things are changing really fast in transportation. So, but I think the emissions point can be hammered home. It's important. And I made a point in my, my Herald article, the last one. It's like half our town was almost on fire last year. Like, what are we doing? Why are we not doing it right now? So, those are the things that I would consider that I think are strong.
Mm-hmm. I guess with the public hearing itself, I don't know if you can comment, but something I noticed was there's I think we've got about 3 minutes or so, not too much time to fully contribute. Right. Based on the points that you're really bringing home, I think that's going to be a priority for us to, again, complement what you're saying and make sure that there's the connection but not full overlap, just because if council hears the same thing from 30 different people or 30 different groups, it's going to get a little bit boring. But I think that's where with the meeting that we're having tonight and the synergy that we know we already have, I think it's going to be a slam dunk on Monday. And with our written submissions, again, with the confidence that you have with council being behind the decision, there's just the fact that we're in a global pandemic that is hampering their financial situation, and frankly, a lot of people's financial situations.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the climate isn't waiting for us to get over this pandemic, and a lot of the social issues that are coming up are only getting heightened and exacerbated with the issues that have been brought to the forefront due to COVID-19. And with cycling, it's not something that you'd normally think of at the top of a priority list for things to do, but it has so many of those connections with things, like you say, with safety, equity, affordability, and the environment, where it just feels like it should be a done deal, and we shouldn't be suspicious that council might be not fully in favor.
Thanks, Nicholas. I'm just aware of the time we're coming up to 5 to 8, and now is perhaps a good time to let some people stay if they have more questions and want to talk further, and let other people go if they're wanting to get on to other things. As soon as this meeting is over, I'm emailing all of you with links to information about the public hearing, a document that gives you sort of more background on the route itself, and also all the notes from tonight, from Matt's comments and some of other people's comments too. I'll be sending that to you, within half an hour after we end. If there's anyone that would like support to write a letter right now, we thought we'd have a little Zoom room where we could have the letter writers go there and give each other moral support as they wrote. Is anyone interested in doing the letter right now? No? Okay.
I'll have to go check on my kids right now. It's their bedtime, but I might be able to.
I think there's about 4 board members on the call right now. We might want to stay a bit longer and chat a bit more about the letter. But for those of you that have joined us, thanks very much. And I trust I'm going to be watching the Herald and Western and to make sure that it's important to, to really change the public's mind, because so far there's been a lot of negative letters to the editor of the sort of like, oh, $8 million is too much kind of letters. Oh, we already have the Channel Parkway. Why do we need anything else?
Right.
So please do get those letters in, both to the city council and to the papers. So I'll maybe, let's say, am I forgetting anything, Sue?
I can't think of anything other than do tell your friends and neighbors if you haven't already. Yeah, I can't think of anything else, but thank you all.
Yeah. So
Can I ask Matthew a question?
Go ahead, Jim.
Sure.
Matthew, I wanted to ask you about what you think about the biking that the city did on Eckhart Avenue.
Oh, the 2 blocks, sort of the work they did on those 2 blocks between Maine and down to Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, mainly that work was done for traffic calming purposes. The city got money from ICBC to essentially fix those intersections because there's so many car crashes there.
Right.
So, we're in support of it. I think it could help a little bit getting people up to the high school. I mean, I don't think it's going to, change things in an enormous matter, but it's certainly much, much better than it was for someone riding a bike through that area. No question about it. So, we're supportive of it, and I'm supportive of it for sure.
Seems rather haphazard, but I guess it is an improvement.
It is an improvement, and even if in the future, if the city doesn't want to, make big adjustments, things like that can be done relatively cheaply when they do things like repaving. So, you know, when we look at, you know, when we lobby the city and, you know, maybe they don't want to spend a lot of money on something, we can say, hey, you're going to repave this thing in 2 years. You could put a curb in here and help people out. So it's another tool that the city uses, but I'm definitely in favor of it more than what it used to be from a driving and bicycling perspective.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
I have one more little question before we go. In the plan, is there something about safe lockups for bikes? Because that is an issue.
Yeah, not right. There isn't, to answer your question. That's something that, so city's working on ideas with that. They've put in, when they bulldozed the, where was it? The Greyhound bus depot, they've put in a couple of lockers there. That's something that they've put in. And basically you can rent them, sort of, you would have exclusive use over it 24/7. What we've advocated to the city, and there's other cities putting these things in, is that down the road, we'd more even just simple racks. Like I was talking at the start of, you know, the conversation, we got the city to buy about $35,000 worth of racks. They put them in a bunch of places that people are parking their bike already that doesn't have bike parking. So, you know, we're advocating for that. But in terms of a big picture idea, sort of similar to our valet, there's cities around the world are putting in these systems that have allow complimentary access. So in other words, you might have a fob or something and you get into this bubble or some sort of pod and then lock your bike in it, and then other people can use it like a parking spot basically, but that's secured. There's a company in New York that's doing them at transit stations called OONEE, OONEE. You can look them up, but there's other manufacturers that do that. And that's one thing that we're asking the city in future is to consider, you know, because not only bike parking is an issue, more people are starting to use an e-bike where before they were using a car. And, you know, rolling out the red carpet, sort of giving people a red carpet treatment when they use a bike, I think is important. So it's something down the road that is important and we're looking at.
Great. Thank you. And thanks, everyone. I think I'll just have a halt and let people who want to go do something else this evening leave the meeting. Thanks very much for joining us. I think a few people are thanks, Janice. A few people are going to stay just to chat more about this first things first letter. So
great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
Great initiative.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hope it goes well.
Thank you for your time, Matt. So we're going to now have a meeting with Mr.
So I was thinking about putting that Google link to the Google Doc on the website so that in the deep dive discussion so that people can go see about writing a letter. What do you think about that?
Sure.
Okay. And then you can edit it, right? But it's already, you know, already ready to go.
Oh, I see. Sure. Yeah.
All right.
So there was about 5, 6 people that didn't join us, so I'll send them all the material. There was somebody, I noticed Eric Newton, who joined us for 5 minutes. So I'll send all of these people, so hopefully they'll still write a letter. Did you want to chat about some other things, Nick?
I guess based on what I was doing timeline wise, I'm off tomorrow and Friday, so I've got a nice lengthy long weekend before the public hearing on Monday. Tomorrow was going to put together a draft, send it to, I guess, probably communications as well as political action, just because we're getting into a bit of a hybrid approach on this type of event. And then with I'm still waiting on a response. Obviously, they're off today, so they might have a shortened week. But with respect to first things first, the phrasing of the public hearing document is geared more towards members of the public contributing their opinions, either by email or phone or in person. I did send a message just waiting on a reply to see what advice they've got for organizations like ours. Because I'm going to be there physically as an individual Penticton resident, regardless on Monday, I'll have the ability to provide my message and have it being well received regardless. But just asked about seeing if there's any special consideration for appearing as a delegation, similar to what they have for city council meetings. And so we'll see what they say on that. But again, the timing of the letter submission, it can be sent off up until Monday morning at 9 or 9:30 a.m. And then with the public address, I'll just be there spouting my words, saying a few things, and I'll put together just a document with some key talking points. It was interesting how what Matt was saying about the focus that he's kind of driven home has been more the economic in terms of affordability, and then the safety aspect, which is really important. If we can really bring home some of the environmental considerations, it might actually spur council to give Margaret, myself, and others on the Sustainability Advisory Committee something to do in the next few months. Because even thinking about, was it Kelowna that had a counting system? If you can measure the amount of people on bicycles, then you've got emissions reductions for your community. And that's when the cost savings can come in for the city itself. And with little projects like that, where you may not have to spend a lot of money to save or receive money from the province in that respect from emission savings, it can really become more attractive when you are inherently in its design reducing the upfront cost of the project. And so much of what I've seen has just been people kind of balking at that $8 million price tag. Again, it's 4 different sections. It's not going to be done all at once. And as Matt said, single intersections cost more than that. And that's something that we've got to, I think, bring home in what we say. So from the emission standpoint, it feels like a good thing for the community as well. I guess it's seeing the relatively few vocal detractors on this. It always surprises me when it ends up being reflected in any councillor's opinions on the projects that they've since been, I guess, advocating and working on.
With a project like this, if you compare it to, I don't know, one of the big parks that we have in town or something, you know, there's all this controversy about it. And then once it's done, everyone says, why didn't we do this 10 years ago? and it becomes this legacy for the future. Yeah, I don't know if we drive that point home as well.
Well,
I'm sure people have.
That's certainly what happened in Vancouver. People really, really, really fought all of the development, and it went through, you know, some rich neighborhoods, and they just really got angry. And now the ridership is like so increased, and the all of the costs have gone way down, and of course the roads are getting less use as well, so that they will last longer. It's just been, you know, and it makes Vancouver a much more green city. And so that's a selling point for the city of Penticton, is to make our tourists happy and to make people feel safe and want to come and spend more time here. I mean, I found when I first moved here, I was the same thing as Matt was saying. I couldn't park my bike anywhere. I would like come in and I would walk right into the store, like the La Cucina or whatever it's called. I would walk my bike right into the store because there was like no bike parking. And I would go around the city and I was kind of just shocked. So it can't be used if it's not a safe and secure way to travel. But I'm sure that that's a real point for the city, is that there will be more people using it and more people coming in and maybe staying longer because they feel safer.
I know with the electric bikes, I mean, and so, you see so many electric bikes these days. Well, no one's going to leave their electric bike locked on street, and that's crazy. But I was going to say, Nicholas, that the whole idea of the CARET program and the fact that it can be just the beginnings of the number of opportunities that the city can use to collect data on how citizens are reducing their emissions, which is the weakest point of the CARET program, because it's all very much corporate. So,
Well, it's a void right now.
I'm sorry?
It's a void. Like they have next to.
In Penticton, it's a void, but in Kelowna, for example, they're already measuring sale of gasoline. So I mean, there's opportunities. So just using the bikes as a start off point, I think is not a bad idea. And we tie other things into it as we go along.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. There was the initiative that came out recently that, again, it ties into it perfectly, where they're seeking to become recognized as an age-friendly community. And I brought it up because I thought it would have been mentioned in any of the documentation, but the connection really hasn't been made yet, because it's probably a little bit newer than the last, I guess, consultation rounds of the bike route. But the key elements of an age-friendly community that they're going for: outdoor spaces and public buildings, pleasant, clean, secure, and accessible. The second one is public transportation is accessible and affordable. And a lake-to-lake bike route just fits perfectly within that, where the affordability aspect just can't be overstated with cycling. And that's where, with so many people, anecdotally, just going for bike rides in the summertime, with me being on the east side of the city, that Government Street route, I was on my mountain bike and then road bike and then mountain bike and road bike, and just depressingly getting passed by these individuals on their e-bikes as they're just waving and not breathing heavily at all, going a lot faster than I was. But the infrastructure needs to be there. And I think that if it feels like Penticton is trying to just become a little bit more comprehensive in its approach to development, its planning, and its approach to different demographics in the city. And the argument can easily be made in any of those segments that this bike route would be worthwhile and a valuable investment. And it hopefully is going to be preaching to the choir on Monday. I know that obviously some of the councillors are hesitant just because they are responsible for the, I guess, the financial success of the city. But at the same time, it still feels like that shouldn't be a big enough hurdle to say no at this point.
Speaking of councillors, sorry, Margaret, speaking of councillors, is Jake Kimberly gone? What did he had a heart attack, I hear, but is he not back?
No.
He had a stroke.
It's surprising because it has been quite a long time. It's surprising there's no re-election, because or whatever you call that. Somebody told me that it's unlikely that he would be back. He has had quite a serious stroke.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my guess had been a by-election would have been at least starting to be talked about at some point.